No one noticed Adrian the first day he walked into the market. That was the point. He wore the kind of clothes people forget the moment they turn away. Plain shoes, faded shirt. Nothing that demanded attention. Nothing that suggested importance. He moved slowly, almost cautiously, like a man who had learned not to take up too much space in the world. The market was alive in its usual chaos. Voices bargaining, metal clanging, laughter cutting through fatigue. Life happening loudly for people who couldn't afford silence. That's where Maya worked. Her shop was small, tucked between a phone accessories stall and a tailor who always played old music too loud. She sold handmade goods, things that took time, patience, and belief. The kind of business that didn't grow fast but grew honestly. Adrian stopped in front of her shop and stood there longer than necessary. Maya noticed him because he didn't rush. Most people glanced, judged the prices, and moved on. But this man looked at each item like it mattered, like he respected the effort behind it. "You made these?" he asked. His voice was calm, not smooth, not trying. "Yes," she replied. "I did." He nodded, picked one up, then put it back carefully. Not because he didn't want it, but like he didn't want to waste her time. "I'll come back," he said. She smiled politely, the way you smile at strangers who make promises you don't expect them to keep. But he did come back. The next day, and the day after that. Sometimes he bought something small. Sometimes nothing at all. Sometimes they just talked about the weather, about business, about how hard it was to keep hope alive when bills didn't care how tired you were. He never asked for favors. Never hinted at needing help. Never tried to impress her. And that was exactly what confused her. Because men usually came with noise, with promises, with performances. Adrian came with silence. Slowly, without either of them naming it, he became part of her routine. She noticed the way he listened more than he spoke. The way he never complained, even when life clearly wasn't generous to him. He told her he did odd jobs. Nothing specific. Nothing ambitious. Just enough to get by. Maya understood that language. Survival had its own dialect. Her friends didn't like him. They noticed him the way people notice weakness. "Is that the guy you keep talking to?" one of them asked one evening as they closed the shop together. "Yes," Maya said. "And what exactly does he do?" "He works," Maya replied. "Like most people." They laughed. Not cruelly, worse. Casually. "You need someone with direction," another said. "Not someone you'll end up carrying." Maya said nothing. She had learned that defending kindness often made people suspicious. At night, when the market lights went off and silence returned, Maya lay in bed staring at the ceiling. That's when the doubts crept in. The fears. The questions she never voiced. Love was expensive. Hope even more so. She cried quietly sometimes. Not because of Adrian, but because of everything else pressing down on her. Rent, supplies, a future that felt fragile in her hands. And yet, when morning came, she treated Adrian the same. With respect, with warmth, with patience. She never let him see the nights where she broke. Adrian noticed more than she realized. He noticed how her smile stayed even when her eyes were tired. How she spoke gently even when stressed. How she never measured people by what they could give her. And that scared him, because this was exactly what he had been looking for, and exactly what he had been afraid of finding. There were days he almost told her the truth. Days he stood outside her shop, hand in his pocket, rehearsing words he never said. Days he watched her struggle and felt something close to guilt claw at his chest. But he stayed quiet, because he wasn't testing her love. He was testing himself. Then things started to go wrong. Slowly at first. Subtle enough to ignore. A supplier delayed delivery. A regular customer stopped coming. Rent increased without warning. Each problem alone was manageable. Together they were suffocating. Maya tried to hide it. She always did. But stress has a way of leaking through the cracks. Adrian saw it in the way her hands shook when counting money. In the way her voice tightened when she answered the phone. In the way she stared too long at the door after customers left. One evening, as the sun dipped low and shadows stretched across the market, Adrian asked a question he hadn't planned to ask. "Are you okay?" Maya paused, just for a second. Then she smiled. "I'm fine." It was the kind of lie people tell when they don't want to burden someone who already carries enough. Adrian nodded. But that night he didn't sleep. Because for the first time in a long while, the life he had built to protect himself was colliding with the one thing he couldn't control. If this story already has you wondering where this is going, take a moment quietly to like the video and subscribe. Not because of what's been revealed, but because of what hasn't. By the end, nothing will mean what you think it does. The next morning, the market felt heavier. Maya arrived early, hoping to prepare for what she suspected would be a long day. The sunlight fell through the corrugated roof in sharp, thin lines, illuminating the dust in the air. Every sound seemed louder. The clatter of boxes, the bartering, the footsteps of passers-by. She tried to ignore the gnawing anxiety, but each unanswered phone call, each invoice left unpaid, felt like a tiny weight on her chest. Adrian appeared mid-morning, as usual, unannounced, carrying nothing. No bags, no gifts, just the calm presence that had begun to feel like a refuge. "Everything okay?" he asked, looking at the tight line of her lips, the way her fingers fiddled with a frayed corner of a display. "I'm managing," she said, too quickly, too forcefully. He didn't argue. He didn't insist. He simply nodded and walked away, disappearing among the crowd. It was the silence that made her wonder most. The quiet that spoke of things left unsaid, of burdens carried alone, of secrets hidden behind ordinary words. By the afternoon, the whispers began. Other vendors had noticed her struggle. A rumor floated through the market that Maya's business was failing. Some offered sympathy. Some smiled with hidden satisfaction. Some whispered so that she would hear. Her friends, who had once teased her about Adrian, now avoided her completely. Not one offered help or encouragement. Some sent knowing glances. Some muttered as she passed. Maya felt it all. She could not ignore it. She could not pretend it didn't hurt. And yet, she refused to crumble in front of them. That evening, as the market closed and the shadows grew long, she sat on the edge of her counter, alone. The money was short. The bills were piling. The voice in her head repeated, louder than anyone else, "You can't survive this. You can't." Her hands shook as she counted coins. Her chest tightened. And yet she didn't cry, not yet. She couldn't. She had learned that survival often demanded silence. When Adrian returned, he stood across the small shop, silent. He had noticed, of course. He always noticed. But he said nothing about the struggles she tried to hide. He didn't offer money. He didn't offer advice. He simply leaned against the doorway, calm, composed, and unshakably present. It was then, in that quiet, that Maya realized the truth about him. Not that he was wealthy, not that he had influence, not that he could solve her problems. No, the truth was far more unsettling. He was watching her and he was judging, not harshly, not cruelly, but with careful attention, with awareness, with knowledge of the sacrifices she had made to remain herself. That night, the first serious test arrived. A supplier called to cancel a delivery, one she had promised to several customers. Another phone call. A creditor threatening legal action if payment wasn't received immediately. The pieces of her careful life were unraveling. Maya's hands trembled as she spoke to the people on the other end. She wanted to scream, to throw something, to run. Instead, she kept her voice calm, polite, and professional. By midnight, she sat in her tiny apartment, the weight of the day pressing down like a physical force. She stared at the wall, quiet tears running unchecked now. No one would see. No one would know. It was in this moment of vulnerability that Adrian arrived. Not knocking, not announcing, just entering as if he had always belonged there. "I heard," he said simply. No judgment, no lecture, just acknowledgement. Maya wiped her face quickly, startled. "I'm fine," she lied, though the sound of her own voice betrayed her. "I don't think you are," he said. "And I don't need you to be fine. Not for me." She looked at him then, really looked, for the first time since she had met him. He wasn't ordinary. He wasn't someone she could easily place in the world she knew. There was a gravity to him now, a quiet authority, the kind that made other people step back without a word. And yet, she hated him a little for the timing. Why now? Why come when she was weak, exhausted, and at her lowest? He knelt beside her. Not dramatically, not to show power, just to be there, just to be steady. Tomorrow, he said softly, we fix this, together. Maya wanted to scream at him, wanted to tell him he didn't understand, that he had no idea what it was like to struggle like this, to fight and lose and fight again. But the words caught in her throat, because he already had. He already understood. And she knew it. For months, Adrian has appeared poor. He has seemed powerless. He has seemed normal. What is his true purpose? And will his intervention save or complicate her life? The night stretched on. Maya finally slept, exhausted, uncertain, and on the edge of despair. But a single thought lingered. Tomorrow would change everything. And she didn't know if she wanted to hope or fear what that change would bring. The next morning, the market was alive with the usual chaos, but Maya barely noticed. Every sound was sharper, every laugh a little too loud. She kept checking her phone, hoping for a message, any message, that would change the course of the day. It didn't come. Suppliers arrived late, their faces tight with impatience. Deliveries were incomplete. Payments were overdue. The stress that had been simmering for weeks now boiled over. Maya felt trapped in a storm that wouldn't end. And her friends, the ones who used to tease her about Adrian, were nowhere to be found. They had vanished, leaving her exposed to the chaos. She took a deep breath and tried to focus. She had survived worse. She could survive this. And then she saw him, Adrian. Not in the market, not obvious. Just a shadow across the street, watching. Quiet, patient, unassuming. Her first reaction was relief, then irritation, then confusion. Why does he always appear at the wrong time? Before she could ask, a group of suppliers approached her. Their tone was sharp, words clipped. We've reviewed your account. The credit line is frozen. Deliveries will be suspended until payments are made. Her chest tightened. Panic threatened to rise, but she held it in. I understand, she said calmly, even though every word trembled. As the men walked away, she noticed the street behind them. A sleek black car had pulled up. Its windows were tinted. She couldn't see who was inside. Adrian stepped out. At first, it seemed ordinary. He walked casually toward her, but there was a subtle change, a confidence, a presence she hadn't seen before. People moved aside instinctively. Vendors stopped working to watch. Even the suppliers she had just spoken to froze. Maya's stomach sank. Something was different. Something she didn't understand yet. He reached her, calm, composed, not smiling, not apologetic, just there. Go back inside, he said quietly. I'll handle this. What do you mean? She asked. He didn't answer, just turned, made a phone call, and a few minutes later, the suppliers approached her again. Their tone had changed. Respect, almost fear, replaced the sharpness from moments before. They nodded curtly and left. Maya blinked. What just happened? She turned to Adrian, searching for a hint, an explanation. Everything okay? She asked. Better than okay, he said, his eyes unreadable. Just stay inside. And that was it. No explanation, no reassurance, just presence. The next day, things escalated further. A key delivery was missing. Her most loyal customer had suddenly canceled their order. Rumors about her business failing spread like wildfire. People whispered that she had been careless, naive, and foolish to trust anyone. Maya felt cornered. For the first time, she considered giving up. She even imagined telling Adrian to leave, to forget all this. She couldn't explain why. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was fear. Or maybe she wanted to see if he would act, without her asking. And then the first shock arrived. At the worst possible moment, Adrian walked into her shop, unannounced, carrying nothing. Why are you here? She demanded. trying to mask the tremor in her voice. "I told you I'd handle it," he said, calmly scanning the shop, his gaze piercing yet unreadable. "Handle what? You can't." "Watch," he interrupted. Within hours, the impossible started to happen. Suppliers called back, agreeing to restore credit lines. Deliveries arrived on time. Key clients returned. Even an unexpected investor reached out, offering support. Maya couldn't believe it. How is this possible? And that's when the first big twist landed. She caught a glimpse of him during the transactions. Not hurried, not frantic. Just smooth, controlled, powerful. A small voice in her head whispered, "He isn't who he says he is." Later that evening, Adrian stayed behind in her shop. He didn't explain. He didn't show his hand. He just sat quietly, reading documents, observing, and occasionally making phone calls that somehow fixed problems she had thought insurmountable. She realized, with a mix of awe and fear, that he had resources beyond imagination. But he didn't smile. He didn't boast. He didn't celebrate. He remained almost invisible, like a ghost moving quietly through power. That night, Maya couldn't sleep. Questions buzzed in her mind like angry bees. Who is he? Why is he helping me? Is it love? Or is it something else? Adrian appeared to sense her turmoil. He didn't enter her room. He didn't speak. He just left a small note on her counter. "You've done everything right. Trust yourself. Trust what you've built. I'll handle the rest." She read it 3 times. Each time her pulse quickened. Not with certainty, but with suspense. For the first time, she began to doubt everything she had believed about him. He a savior? A manipulator? A billionaire hiding in plain sight? Or something else entirely? Maya's life teetered on the edge of revelation. One step forward, one misstep away from chaos. The next morning, Maya opened her shop to a quiet street. Too quiet. The market felt different, almost waiting. And then she heard it, a deep, controlled hum of engines. Black luxury cars pulled up in a neat line. Tinted windows reflected the morning sun. Vendors froze. Buyers stopped. Conversations paused. Her heart skipped a beat. Adrian stepped out of the first car, dressed impeccably. A suit tailored with precision, shoes polished, hair perfectly in place. Not a single hint of the ordinary man she had known. This was a man who could command rooms before speaking a word. Her stomach twisted. Who is he really? The suppliers, the investors, even her old rivals watched as he walked calmly toward her shop. He wasn't smiling. He didn't need to. Every movement radiated power and authority. When he reached her, he spoke softly but firmly. "Everything you've built is safe. And more than safe, it's about to grow." Maya's hands shook. She wanted to ask questions, scream, cry, laugh, all at once. "Who are you?" she whispered. He paused. Then, slowly, deliberately, he said, "I've never been poor. Not truly. I needed to find love, real love, without masks, without convenience. And I found it in you." Her mind froze. For months, she had believed she knew him. Believed he was a man like any other, struggling alongside her. She had been wrong. Adrian Hale, the man she had called Ethan in her mind, was a private equity billionaire. A man who built empires quietly, unseen, and now had chosen to intervene in her life personally. But even this revelation came with a test. He could have solved everything immediately, but he had chosen to watch, to let her struggle, to see if she would remain true. Maya's throat tightened. Anger, relief, confusion, and love collided within her. She had never imagined that loyalty could be tested this way, or that it could feel so terrifying and exhilarating all at once. Adrian did not merely save her business. He expanded it, tenfold. New locations, strategic partnerships. Investors who had once ignored her now sought her out. Suppliers offered better deals. Customers returned with loyalty renewed. Maya could hardly recognize her own life. What had been fragile, precarious, and uncertain was now thriving, unstoppable, almost surreal. And yet, she almost walked away, because for a moment, she questioned, was this love? or an elaborate manipulation? Adrian noticed her hesitation. He didn't anger, he didn't lecture. He simply said softly, "I never wanted someone who loved my money. I wanted someone who loved me when nothing was promised. You stayed. You believed. You fought. And now, you rise." Tears rolled down Maya's cheeks, unrestrained this time, not from fear, not from despair, but from release, from recognition, from joy she had never known could feel so full. They stood side by side, looking at what she had built and what he had quietly ensured would flourish, not as savior and rescued, but as partners, equal, strong, loyal. And the final twist came quietly, in the subtle reshaping of power. The people who had mocked her, envied her, and whispered behind her back now came seeking favors, alliances, or attention. Maya did not deny them. She did not act vengeful. She simply stepped into her power, her confidence radiating, her dignity intact. Adrian watched her, pride softening his stern expression. Not pride in his wealth, but in her courage, in her resilience, in the truth that she had always been strong enough. He had merely illuminated it. And love, finally, unfolded without pretense. Not transactional, not convenient, not conditional, just real. She realized something profound that night. Some people will stay when the world applauds. Some will leave when the world is silent. The love that mattered, the kind that could survive deception, hardship, and uncertainty, is forged in the shadows of doubt. Maya smiled, exhausted, humbled, and alive. And Adrian, standing quietly behind her, said only one thing. "You stayed. And now, together we rise."